the most important part is that relationship between that patient and that physician, because if the patient trusts the physician, they're more likely to follow the medical advice that's given.
Yeah.
And when they follow that medical advice, they're more likely to have the outcome they're looking for.
AdvoKAYte, holding healthcare accountable. This podcast is my way of sharing what I've learned about the mistakes, the cover-ups, and the ways we can all protect ourselves. We're all in this together. Hello and welcome to another episode of AdvoKAYte, where we hold healthcare accountable. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Chad Erickson and Barry Howell. They're both experienced administrators on the inside of working with hospitals and large physician practice groups. You'll get to know these two great guys. They've also formed a company known as Texas Best Docs, where they're trying to help patients get more information about their doctors. If any of you have ever Googled a doctor or tried to get information about a doctor as you're in the selection process or in an ongoing relationship with a doctor, you know that it's hard to tell, well, what's a marketing data, what might be a disgruntled Google review that has nothing to do with the physician's competence versus what's the real information I need to make an informed decision. So we're going to jump right into it and break that down today. So welcome, Barry and Chad.
Thank you, Kay.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thanks so much. You know, I think if I can say this, I think we kind of hit it off when we first met. You know, there's like, you're the kind of guys that somebody, not me, of course, would want to go have a cold beer with. But I'm not outing myself as a cold beer drinker. I'm just saying, if I were to have a cold beer, you guys would be great guys to go have one with. But all kidding aside, you all have very serious jobs, and you also have this very serious project that you're doing. So first of all, I wanted to say, Chad, just introduce yourself and tell us what you are currently doing in your 9-to-5 job.
Okay. So currently I'm the practice executive for a decent sized internal medicine group. It's primary care is kind of where medicine starts. And this is where, instead of episodic care, which I'd done before, we're actually trying to take care of the patients for generations. And we're very blessed that in some cases, I have 4 generations of families that are attending us and trusted us with trying to keep them well and help them be healthy longer.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's here in the DFW area,
Yes, ma'am.
right?
It's a medical specialist associated, and it's right off 75, right in the heart of Dallas.
There you go. And how many physicians are with that group?
So right now we have 9. We're looking to add another one, and then we've got a couple of mid-level providers, but we're actually focusing our practice on the things that can long-term heal patients. We're trying to get away from whatever we can of just treatments and trying to focus on cures. And that's an important change. And I think it's where medicine is going.
Mm-hmm. Well, you'll have to come back on another episode and talk deeper about that subject.
Absolutely.
I'm sure a lot of people are interested in that.
You bet.
Nobody wants to go to the doctor. Nobody wants to be sick. And it's hard to tell what is real science that can prevent illness versus what's somebody trying to sell me today.
Absolutely.
So, well, Barry, tell us a little bit about what you're doing currently.
Sure. I'm the CEO for Plano Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Center. I have been for 2 years at this point, and it's a group that's been around for almost 50 years in Plano, and very well-established, well-known group. Honored to work with them and to treat the surrounding communities for musculoskeletal care.
Awesome. Well, what inspired you guys to create Texas Best Docs?
Well, I think when we got down to it, we had some family members that had made some poor medical decisions in who they chose as the physician to work on their case. And the other part is, in our day jobs, we found it was hard sometimes to get good information on a physician that we were either considering adding to the group or a referral source that we would send patients to. And so that's what started it, is the lack of really good transparency there. And then we built from there. We didn't have any idea how complicated or difficult this was going to be at the beginning. And, we continued to strive to reiterate to make sure that we're able to provide good information to patients and also to physicians to make good decisions.
It's interesting what you said there, Chad, which it's not just the patients that are in the dark, it's also people on the inside.
It's difficult for doctors too.
Everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why do you suppose that is? You want to feel that? Barry?
Sure. Yeah. I think it's a combination of things. There's a lot of noise. I think everyone is dealing with information overload, especially with the advent of our cell phones. And so, we've become a society where we look at Amazon reviews to judge a product's worthiness for something we might consider. And that sort of methodology is translated over into healthcare, and anyone can write a review for any reason. And a lot of times it's very challenging to remove a Google review for a provider or a hospital or, any healthcare institution or person. And so what we wanted to do is try and rise above the noise with facts. So our purpose was to really look at what information is something that's not as subjective as someone didn't like the color of the wall paint in this physician's office, therefore they're a bad physician. So we needed to rise above that, and that's why we focused on the Texas Medical Board actions side of things.
Well, tell us, and Barry, either one of you can field the question, but Barry, if you want to, tell us how would a consumer know the difference between whether Texas Best Docs is one of those pay-to-play type sites where a doctor has paid money to, oh, look, I'm considered a 5-star doctor versus just the facts, as you say.
Yeah, so we'll never edit any Texas Medical Board information for money. The integrity of our information is critical to our whole platform. So physicians can pay to have a premium landing page where they can add photos, maybe their CV, some more information about procedures they might conduct to help better explain their practice. But we'll never edit or alter any information from the Texas Medical Board for no amount of money.
Well, Chad, we talked about the Texas Medical Board, its issues, and we'll continue to talk about that on this podcast. But, it's kind of the old adage, garbage in, garbage out. You guys and the patients and other doctors are sort of at the mercy of the integrity of the information that's available. Is that
We
fair?
are. And along those lines, we're not saying that any organization, and I don't care who it is infallible. What we wanted to do is we just wanted to get more of this information to the patients so that they can evaluate it. If you have a doctor that's in trouble for not filing their paperwork on time or something like that, you know what? That may not be a deal breaker. But if there's something that's related to patient care or there's other behavioral issues, you would want to know that if you had your family member attending that physician. Now, we know clearly that not everything is on the Texas Medical Board. And I will put it to them, they've got a very difficult job to do. I mean, this is hard. There's a lot of doctors in Texas. There's a lot of situations. There's a lot of information to comb through. They get a lot of complaints. But that said, if something has gone through that review process, we know the integrity of that is going to be pretty high most of the time. So for us, that was a safe place for us to start, where we felt like not only did it represent our doctors well, but it also represented good information for the patients to make better decisions.
Well, one thing about this show is that, I don't just invite guests on who agree with me. And, our work experiences, our professional experiences are a little bit different. So from my perspective, what I would say about that is, for the rare few Texas physicians who are actually disciplined in a meaningful way by the Texas Medical Board, that's a pretty good indication that there's a problem there. But conversely, the fact that a doctor is clean on the Texas Medical Board website is not an indication necessarily that they're a good doctor.
Couldn't agree more, and you're exactly right. we look at our information as, first of all, it is what the parties, the members on the medical board decided. If there is a board action, there was an investigation, there was a trial, if you will, or a review, and then there was some sort of decision made. And so there was some sort of due process involved by people that we hope are competent to, at least more than the lay person that's maybe not in healthcare. So for us, when you stand that up next to a Google review of someone who doesn't like the paint color, I'll stick with my example, we felt like that was more of objective information than subjective. We certainly don't portend that that is all the information related to a provider. And we think you should do as much due diligence as you can. Talk to other people. Hopefully, you know someone in healthcare that you can ask about a provider or a facility, and then do more research. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to take an active role in our care.
100% agree. So let's talk about what I'd like to do is break this down. First, beginning with what information are you all able to access and what is available on the Texas Best Docs website? And then we'll talk about what isn't available to you all, to any of us.
Sure. Well, to start with, we started just with the Texas Medical Board information. Now, as we are expanding, we have new iterations of the product, we'll add additional information. We felt like for a one-to-one comparison, that was the most important for that physician. Now, there's other places. CMS has a rating system, but what a lot of people don't know is that if a group is 30 or more providers, CMS actually aggregates the scores. So if you have 100 providers that are part of a group and they've got 4 stars, that doesn't mean every provider in there is 4 stars. That just means that as an overall organization, they're at 4 stars. So we would like to get a little bit more granular than that. It's eventually we will be incorporating some of that information because it is good information. It's just we have limited time and limited resources, and what was our most important punch that we could make available. There's other information that you can get from advocacy groups. There's information that you can get from the National Provider Index. There's data brokers that will get you information, but all of that can be very expensive, unfortunately, as we found out.
Right. Exactly. And so, what about lawsuits? I'm kind of asking a question I know the answer to, because even for us, if we want to know if a doctor has been sued in another state or even another county, some of those are online, some aren't. You'd have to know where they had been. And
it is very, very tricky. This is, as we were joking about at the beginning, our naivety was what kind of brought us in here, because that was one of the things we have worked with a friend that's an attorney trying to figure out where some of this information is. And it is all over the place. And, the hard part is it would be good to know, but it's difficult to aggregate that together. And as we said before, you don't actually have to do something wrong to get sued as well. I mean, it's just the truth.
yeah. Well, the fact that there's a lawsuit pending against a doctor is not evidence of any wrongdoing necessarily. But as I like to say, look for the patterns.
It's another data point.
And yes, and oftentimes when there's smoke, there's fire. Sometimes when there's a small payout, that's an indication that maybe it wasn't serious wrongdoing. But there again, the average person couldn't tell, did this result in a serious lawsuit, or was this a nuisance type thing? But of course, and this is my 2 cents worth, y'all may have different experiences, but for a competent medical malpractice lawyer, they do not file frivolous lawsuits. It is against their own financial self-interest to do so. It costs, on the low end, say $70,000 or $80,000. On the high end, for a really complex, long drawn out thing that goes to trial and goes up on appeal and back down, I mean, $350,000. Why would anybody have the money or to spend that kind of time to bring a silly lawsuit? Plus, most medical malpractice lawyers try to be really responsible because they understand, these are people's lives or whatever. But of course, from where you all sit, you probably could also tell some stories of some silly lawsuits that have been brought. So
I did have a radiologist that I was recruiting from the East Coast who was sued by a patient because they claimed they lost their psychic powers after they got an MRI. And initially, because of the way that state was set up, it went to a jury trial and they won initially, but then it was overturned. So
I hear
Yeah.
stories like this, and I'm just like, I need to know who that lawyer is and why they still have a law license. That's crazy.
it's, well, and it's, to your point, I think this is really good information. And yeah, it's a lot of people don't go out suing frivolously. I actually like that as a data point much better than somebody reporting to the Texas Medical Board right now, because under the current rules, I can report anonymously to the Texas Medical Board about anything. And so, I mean, I know we've fielded some complaints where I'm at, and we're at 100 for 100 because we try to do the right thing by patients all the way through, but you don't necessarily have to do something wrong in that situation as well.
I was talking with Laura Beal on a prior episode, and we were talking about all of the hospital data that is kept in terms of complication rates, readmissions, infections. Did I say postoperative complications? All of these things, blood loss. And they can slice and dice that data 1,000 different ways. Are you all able to access that kind of data for the Texas Best Docs?
No, that is, in fact, not only can we not access that, but that is, in some cases, it's protected by law to be able to access that information.
Yeah.
That's where we start getting into privileging information, and it's very, very, it's very protected. And even if I had access to it, I couldn't share it.
Well, I've seen examples of this, of credentialing bodies, we'll call them, do a soft pull. So it doesn't go on the record because they didn't like what they saw for a physician's background that can access the National Practitioner Data Bank because they're a credentialing body. And you have to be a credentialing body to have access to that information. That's where your claims information is for the malpractice. That's where errors, death, a lot of information that I think the average public citizen would like to have, access to. The other side of that coin, the argument is a lot of them can't handle that information and put it within the right context. And there's some merit to that on that side. So it's a dilemma because there's a lot of really good information out there regarding providers that certain institutions can access that we can't. And so, we've testified in Austin at the state legislature on transparency in healthcare. We've supported bills to provide more transparency, not just at the state level, but at the federal level. And we continue to advocate that because we ultimately feel like the only way we can move forward with better care for everyone is to tell the truth and for everyone to have access to the truth.
Absolutely. Because there's an opposite side on this of not just avoiding the doctors that have some challenges, but in our practice, for example, we need to build that trust with our physicians because the most important part is that relationship between that patient and that physician. Because if the patient trusts the physician, they're more likely to follow the medical advice that's given.
Yeah.
And when they follow that medical advice, they're more likely to have the outcome they're looking for.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. And unfortunately, here in the last few years, healthcare is taking a huge hit to that trust, and it's hurt healthcare.
Yeah.
It's hurt healthcare across the board.
Well, there's no question about it. And I heard somebody saying, like, in particular with hospitals, that the average person's trust for a hospital is around like what it used to be for tobacco companies or, HMOs back in the day. It's not good. And most people who have a loved one admitted to the hospital know, hey, somebody needs to be there
Yes.
to keep an eye and to make sure that the patient is safe. And, that's maybe not always deserved, but oftentimes it is. I can tell you from my personal experience on that. But this is what I would say about that data. I understand it is behind an iron curtain, and probably in my lifetime that will never change. But, the information that we do have access to has its limits. If it were me and I was going to have to go have, let's just say, a hysterectomy, and I had my insurance allowed me to have a choice of 5 surgeons, I would want to know what their infection rates were, what their complication rates were, what the rate of returning patients to the OR would be, because that would mean something, there was a bowel perforation or something, it was discovered, they had to take the patient back and fix something like that. I would want to know the metrics that really matter because, other doctors would tell you and nurses would tell you, oh, well, there's a wide umbrella of things that fall under post-operative complications or hospital readmissions. But there's a reason that hospitals track that data and not do people like the color of scrubs they wear or their bedside manner or whatever. It's because those are the very telling things. And I personally just think that, of course, doctors have a right to privacy or whatever, but we're not giving patient names. Why not know? Well, Dr. A tends to have more postoperative complications than Dr. B. And so therefore if I had a choice, I'd choose Dr. B. But
And I completely agree with your train of thought, by the way. It makes perfect sense. Facilities have to publish this information if they participate with Medicare. So there are readmission rate data available. There are death and complication rate. There are infection rate. There are patient experience scores. CMS has this data available at their website. We actually did a website. Our first iteration was goodhospitalbadhospital.com. And we took all the CMS information and we put it on our website so people could see this basic 5 data points that most people want to. And so by extension, you could say if this facility that this physician works at has a very low complication rate and they have a low readmission rate and a next to 0 death and complication rate, you could by extension say, okay, well then the providers that work there by extension should have those quality scores associated with them as well.
yes.
So there is a way to kind of hopscotch to that information, but you have to go through the facility data to do it as it stands currently.
Right, yes. It's better than nothing,
It is.
but it could be better because it could be by provider.
Well, I just feel bad for someone who doesn't come from our world that, is now facing a healthcare issue and they have this overwhelming sense of dread. Set aside the drama and the horrificness of dealing with a loved one that's having problems.
Right,
You now have to try and become an expert on all these things that you've never even been exposed to.
right. Wouldn't even know where to look. Well, how do you think, Barry, that we can get to the point, especially with today's technology, where the data can be mined, the data can be aggregated, but we also balance a physician's right to privacy?
And that's challenging because you're essentially having to play a referee, right? We don't want to egregiously attack physicians unnecessarily, but we need to hold them accountable. And we want to protect patients, but we don't want to protect patients behaving badly. So everyone needs to sit down and sit up straight if you want to, if you want to put it that way.
Right.
But if we all come to the table with, I would call hopefully pure intentions to provide great quality care, and then also to be a good, patient that's compliant with medical orders to try and get the best outcome. It starts with transparency and accountability, and the patient has to take some ownership in this, and they have to either get an advocate, a friend, or a family member that they trust to help them through this difficult time. Because
Yep.
when we're facing those times of duress, we don't always think very clearly. And so I would more than anything say that people need to get someone that they trust to help them through that time, to do their research, to do their due diligence. Look at as many data points as you can get your hands on. Texas Best Docs is just one data point. Also, look at the Google reviews. Look at all the information elements on the facility. If you're going to have a procedure that's scheduled, have time to look at that and evaluate that. Get recommendations from friends, family members, church members, whoever your circle of trust is. Reach out to them and ask questions.
And if you know a nurse, the nurses know all.
They do.
That's the one. That's what we used to say in trial. The bailiff knows. Ask the bailiff.
Yes.
The bailiff knows everything. So I would say in this setting, if you know a nurse, ask a nurse. But do you think that patients can rely on a physician referral?
It's a good start. So if, like, for example, if we're referring a patient to a facility or to a physician, it means that we've had good experiences with them. I can tell you, especially now, because our program for Medicare, we're at risk. So if we're sending patients to specialists that are not behaving well, that actually comes back to us, and we get to see that data probably more transparently now than we ever had. So that's a fantastic thing. But if we're referring someone to a physician, that means we've had good experiences, that they've worked well. I will tell you that most physicians will take the complaints from their patients that they've referred very, very strongly. Because the last thing I want to do is tarnish my reputation by sending a patient to somebody that they don't get taken care of. And so, yes, it's a great place to start, but is it the end of the story? No.
So what is the best advice you guys have for patients in terms of checking out their doctors?
Bring someone with you. Make sure you have somebody with you. That's super important. Take some time to review through the physician. I would say ask somebody else in healthcare that you know. If you know somebody, or you know somebody that knows somebody in healthcare, ask them. That could be an imaging tech, that could be a circulator, it could be anybody in there. And then last of all, trust your gut.
Yeah, ask questions. If you don't feel like you're being listened to by any provider, that's a red flag. You should feel very comfortable asking as many questions as you have. Sometimes it can be intimidating to be in front of a physician, so I'd recommend writing down your questions ahead of time. Run those questions by your advocate before your appointment, and then make sure that physician listens to you and doesn't talk over you and doesn't ignore you or dismiss you. You need to be heard, because this is your care.
Yeah.
You're the patient, you're the customer. And so you need to make sure that you're receiving the service that you're paying for.
Well, that's great advice. And then I would also say, and also go to texasbestdocs.com and search for your doctor. And I understand that you can also sign up where you would get pinged with new information about your doctor. Is that right?
Yes. It's something we're real proud of. First of all, you get 2 searches for free. So if you have someone you've been wondering about, go register. It takes you 10 seconds to register for a free account. You get 2 free searches. And then after that, it's $7 a month for unlimited searches. And what you're referencing is monitoring, and we call it Doc Watch. So you can put up to 10 physicians that you or your loved ones see, that you see with regularity. And then if there is a Texas Medical Board action on any of those providers, you will get a text message and or email that will alert you that your provider on your Doc Watch list has a new Texas Medical Board action. Click here to read it. And then you decide if that's a big deal for you or not.
Well, I think I need to get an account, not only for my own doctors, but to put the doctors that are frequent flyers. That's what we call them, the frequent flyers, where you start seeing the same names over and over and over again. Um, anyway, those are the problem children that we probably all could identify. But I really want to thank you guys for joining us and talking about this very important thing and the work that is ongoing to get greater transparency for patients. But I want to have you back for another episode where we talk about the modern practice of medicine and what's, kind of what's closing in on physicians and practice groups like those that you manage. And so if you guys would be willing to come back again, I'd love to continue the conversation.
Absolutely. We'd love to.
All right.
Thank you
you,
for
Kay.
having us.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of AdvoKAYte. I want to thank Chad and Barry again for joining us and beginning this conversation about transparency. It's certainly a conversation and a theme that we'll continue talking about. Chad and Barry have been gracious enough to come back and join us for another episode where we talk about what ails doctors these days. What are the pressures on doctors and small private practices that are can impact patient safety? So thank you again for joining us, and please come back for another episode.